name is Kelly. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my February wrap-up. Almost said March. I read 11 books in February. That is one less than my January. I read 3 ebooks. I didn't get to any audiobooks, sadly. But I had some favorites and some not so favorite books. What am I going to... And if you can hear the TV, my husband and my kids are watching TV. So, the first one, it's an ebook. And it's one of my new favorites of the year. And it is The Secrets We Keep by Nikki Lee Taylor. Nikki Lee Taylor. And I got this as a blog tour spot. And I need to own my own copy. This book, it came this close to being a DNF for me, and now it's one of my favorites because I was going through so many emotions while reading it. Anxiety, fear, disgust, anger, sadness. I didn't smile once in this book, and I didn't laugh. I felt all of the bad emotions, and it's one of my new favorites. If a book can make me feel so many emotions, then it's a favorite. And yeah, so this book is it hit one of my phobias deep from the very first chapter. One of my phobia, I have a fear of driving. I am scared to drive. I was in a bad car accident 10 years ago, and I was pregnant with my second child at the time, and my oldest, she was 1. She didn't even turn 1 yet. She just had her first birthday, and we were in a bad car accident, and yeah, so that is like, that's my fear. And I have anxiety attacks and panic attacks every time I go somewhere in a car, and whenever my husband goes to work and is on his way home, and it's just bad. But anyways, enough about me. You're here about the book, so not about me. Anyways, the first chapter, the woman loses her husband and son in a car accident, and she blames herself for not being there, and that her son had to die without her. And her husband was her soulmate, and she just feels lost. And so she has a driving fear. She can't get into the car and drive 5 feet without having a massive panic attack. And then it's about this other woman who was sexually abused by her father when she was 9. Or no, when she was 6 up until when she was supposed to get her period. That when he was supposed to stop. That's what happened with her older sisters. That's when he stopped messing with them. But did he really stop messing with them? And so, it's got driving phobia. It's got incest and child abuse, which made me almost stop reading the book because it was so graphic and so disgusting, and I was just about ready to take on the world and beat every pedophile, rapist, everybody. And then this book takes a turn, and it becomes about murder and a kidnapping plot, and it's a plot twist at the end, which is just great. Nikki Lee Taylor needs to write more books, and the cover does not do this book justice. You don't know who is who. Is it the girl that was raped by her father? Is it the woman that has panic, stress? Is it the girl at the end who is the plot twist? You don't know. So, I love this book. 5 out of 5. Highly recommend it. Second book I read was my least favorite book of the month, and that is The Zookeeper's Wife by Diane Ackerman. I wanted to like this book. I thought it was just going to be all about the survivors, that's the Jewish survivors who stayed in the zoo and hid. But it's got some stories of how if there were Germans or Polish loyalists or who was sympathizers to the Nazis and who didn't want to die for like harboring Jews and would turn anybody in. If they came up to the door, then they would hide the Jews and they would play music. That would be their signal to hide in the lion's den or underneath the food storage. But this book took so many irrelevant tangents, and one of the Jews that was in the ghetto, he had an extensive bug collection, and he gave it to the keepers, not the keepers, but the zoo curators at the time to keep safe. And this Nazi dude who was into bugs went to the zoo to look at the collection, and then the author just goes into this tangent about every single bug in the collection and how this one bug could shoot venom out of its stomach so many feet. And I just did not care whatsoever about the animals' background or history or their anatomy. I did not care. I just wanted to read this for the information about how the Jews hid in this zoo. I was skimming through the information. It was so irrelevant, and it was so messy and tangent filled, and it was just bad. So I'm going to watch the movie and hope that the movie is better than the book. Get rid of my disappointment of The Zookeeper's Wife, I decided to pick up another World War II book that I had chosen for the Buzzword Reading Challenge for this month. This month, or February's buzzword was a color, and so I chose Black Dove, White Raven. And this is about two kids, a white girl and a Ethiopian American boy, and their mothers are known as Black Dove, White Raven, flying ladies. His mom flies the plane, and her mom does the stunts on the wings. And so one day, his mom she hits a bird while she's up in the air, and the bird breaks off a piece of a propeller and kills her instantly. And so, in her dream with her best friend, her Amelia and Tio's mother dies, but M survived. This takes place in 1930s Pennsylvania, and then they moved to Ethiopia to live out Tio's mom's dream of taking him back to his homeland, because his father was Ethiopian and they met in France. So it talks about Ethiopia and how there's still slavery there in this time, and how Tio's father was a slave. And it is also the beginning of World War II. They're talking about Hitler, they're talking about Mussolini, and how Italy is invading the African continent, and how Ethiopia is next. Going into this, I knew that Africa was involved in World War II, but I didn't know by who. I knew it was by the Germans because there's some documentaries that I've watched with Nazi gold, Nazi stolen treasure, and artifacts showing up in these African countries. But I didn't know the extent of Italy's part and how Italy invaded by Elizabeth Wein. This was my first Elizabeth Wein book, and it was really good. It was written in like flight logs and diary entries, and it was great. I liked it. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. I love learning the history of Ethiopia. The only thing I knew about Ethiopia before going into this was that its capital was Addis Ababa, and that was because I watched a travel vlog of Fun for Louie. He went to Ethiopia and how it is a poverty-stricken country and needs help. At first, going into this, it's dated. It's got the regular dates, and then you learn that Ethiopia has their date 7 years behind. So it's, I don't know if that's still true to this day. It's like 2021. So 7 years ago, it would be 2014. So I don't know if that's how they still do their dates, but it was a little confusing at first until I learned that that's what they do, and then it became much more clear. You don't find out until like the middle of the book, and so I was like, wait, what is this? And enjoyed the flight logs and the essays from Em and Teo because they're learning to fly. Okay, the next one is a read aloud, and it is Echo Mountain by Lauren Wolk, and I read this out loud to my kids. It's set during the Great Depression, and it's about a girl named Ellie. Her family has to leave the city because there's no money, and they move on to this mountain, which is called Echo Mountain. And so one day her father's chopping down a tree, and her older sister is supposed to be watching her little brother, and her little brother is chasing a rabbit. And where the rabbit stops, the boy stops, and it's right in the path of the tree. And so Ellie comes running and pushes her little brother out of the way, and then she's in the path of the falling tree, and her father pushes her out of the way, and he gets crushed by the tree and is put into a coma. And so he's getting bed sores, and he's not moving, but he's still being taken care of. He's still breathing. His blood's still flowing, and Ellie's older sister is blaming Ellie for the accident, and Ellie took responsibility to keep from blaming her older sister for not watching the little brother. And so Ellie's doing these chores, and she's trying to make her own home brew to wake her father up. She tries putting a snake in his bed, and then she sees this mangy, tick-filled dog, and he's wanting her to follow him up the mountain. And so one day she decides to follow this dog, and she finds this old woman bedridden, and the dog just brings Ellie to his master, and yeah, it's just about grief and health and coming of age, maybe. I ended up giving it a 3. I thought it was boring. It's very character driven. There's no plot whatsoever. Next is a graphic novel, and that is another World War II. And it is I Survived the Nazi Invasion, 1944. And this was by Lauren Tarshis, and I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5. This is a middle grade historical fiction, and it is set in Poland, so the same setting as Zookeepers Wife. And it is about these two kids. They escape the ghetto, and they run into the woods. And they eventually get found by their aunt, who is part of the resistance. And she takes them into the swamp, and it's basically that. Them hiding, them blowing up trains and all this. And I think this was adapted from a actual, like, scholastic junior novel. Kind of like the size of Magic Treehouse book. I haven't read it. They hide in a partisan camp in a swamp. That's basically what it is. I was given this by a blog tour. This one, it's being adapted into a movie by Martin Scorsese, and it's going to have Leonardo DiCaprio play the bad guy, which I really think he needs to reprise his role as J. Edgar in this. But that is Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann. This takes place in Oklahoma, and this is part of my A to Z Global Reading Challenge. And it is about the Osage Indian Nation and how the American government kept moving them, and eventually the American government moved them to this rock-filled place. And then eventually there's mining going on where the Osage are living, and they're sitting on top of a massive oil reserve. And so they start getting paid for it. Kind of like the Beverly Hillbillies. But then the government decides, oh, well, you can't spend money right, so we're going to give you guardians to watch over your money and to allot your money and help you pay your bills, help you buy food. The guardians start stealing the money and not giving the Osage their money. Like, they can't go shopping. Like, if they're out of food, they gotta wait until next month to get their allotment. That pissed me off a lot. And then the Osage start dying off. And it talks about the murder, it talks about poisoning, talks about explosions, and it's the birth of the FBI and how every single agent and investigator who got too close and started finding stuff out, how they started dying. It's just, it was a trip. I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I'm ready to see the movie, and it was told as a story, so it wasn't boring. I flew through this, and this is a nonfiction. If a nonfiction is told in a story format, I will fly through it. If it's a nonfiction with like lists and dates and just facts and names, and not told in the story format, I will fucking take forever to read it. I read this in 4 days. This and the Zookeepers Wife took me 5 days to read because of the irrelevant information. This does not go off tangent. It doesn't. It talks about a murder, and it goes into that person's history and how they're related to the previous murder. So, also, the amount of confirmed murders that doesn't add up with how many actual deaths is sickening, and it's saddening that there's no way to confirm those murders because they happened so long ago. There's no evidence. The people are dead. The people who did the murders are dead. The accomplices are dead. So it's just hoping that movie does the book and the Osage Nation justice. So the next book I read was another graphic novel. It was another middle grade. And that is Allergic by Megan Wagner Lloyd. And this is about a girl named Maggie. She's celebrating her 10th birthday and she wants a puppy. So her parents take her and her twin brothers to the shelter to get her a puppy for her birthday. And then she's playing with all these puppies, and then she comes home and she just starts scratching. She is just breaking out. She goes to the hospital and finds out that she is allergic to animals that have fur or feathers. And she is just, she's just humiliated, and I felt so bad for Maggie. She just wanted something of her own. Her twin brothers have each other. Her mom and dad are having a new baby. And she just feels all alone. I ended up giving this a 3. It was saddening. I couldn't imagine not having my pets. I have 3 cats, and I know what it's like to lose an animal or have an animal taken away from me because of circumstances. Not allergy wise, but like home living situation wise. And it's not the same thing, but I could understand her grief of not being able to have a pet because I was not able to have my pet. The next one was another read aloud to my kids, and that is Prince Caspian. This is book 2, not book 4, or book 4 if you're reading it in chronological. But this is book 2, just in the publication order, of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe series by C.S. Lewis. This is about the kids going back to Narnia and finding out that they have been gone for hundreds of years and that there's a new king that is bad, and he's trying to kill his nephew, who is the rightful king, Prince Caspian. And so I give this a 4. It was short. It was okay. The girls didn't get any recognition or respect from their older brothers. Susan, she's the oldest sister, and she was put down like a stupid woman. It was a kind of sexist. I mean, Susan fought in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but in this one, she didn't get any fighting time whatsoever. She had to stay with Lucy, while Peter and Edward went and fought the battles with Prince Caspian. And so, Susan and Lucy, they stay with Aslan the whole entire time, and nothing goes on with them. And yeah, Prince Caspian, he's trying to gather up this army to get all of the animals back and the trees talking again, and defeat his uncle and kick out his uncle's wife and the new baby, because he is the rightful king. He is Caspian the 10th. And so, yes, I watched the movie. Ben Barnes, he's Prince Caspian. He's the Darkling in the new Shadow and Bone series on Netflix. And that's the only reason I read this. That's the only reason I watched the movie. The next one is a nonfiction, another A to Z global nonfiction book that I have on my list. And that is Notes from a Small Island by Bill Bryson. Going into this, I thought it was a standalone. Okay? And I didn't know what to expect. I expected to learn things about the British humor and what they mean when they say what I'm having for tea, which I obviously know. It's supper. It's dinner. And their mannerisms and why they call certain things. I didn't get that. I ended up giving this a 3. This is set in 1995 with Bill Bryson living in England and him going around the country and just exploring England. That's been his home for the past couple years, and he's taken his family back to America, to his birthplace. He praises and criticizes small towns and the villages and cities. If he's not liking a place, he will criticize it to no freaking end. And if he enjoys the place, he praises it and calls it, he uses the word prosperous a lot. That's the word. If it's a good village or town that he goes into, he goes, this place is really prosperous. And they're prosperous in this and they're prosperous in that. I'm like, dude, choose another word to describe your favorites, okay? Prosperous, it's been overdone, okay? And he goes into history about each village and town, like if they were a mining town, if they were a seafaring town, if it was a town that just popped up overnight and then died the next day. It was funny but boring. I got so bored of reading him going into a different village and then just hitting going into his hotel room or his little Airbnb, not Airbnb, but his little hostel or a bed and breakfast, and praising or criticizing the room and then going out to eat. It's like, I'm going into my room, put the bag down. Now I'm going out to eat and check out the town or whatever. And then he bitches about the what's it called? The metro tunnels, the underground, and taxis, and double-decker buses. He just bitches about everything. I'm giving this 3. I might actually change it to a 2 because I did not enjoy it whatsoever. And yeah, this took me way longer to read than I wanted. I wanted to read it in like 3 days, and I read it in like 6 days, and that was just not a good time for me. I should have DNF'd it, but I don't like DNFing books. I need to start DNFing books to save my time. Long-awaited read was Artemis by Andy Weir. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5. It was a very fast-paced and quick read. Something I needed after long, stilted books. Going into this, I've heard the review that Andy Weir cannot write a woman. And I wholeheartedly agree. The Jazz, I had to keep reminding myself that she was a girl and I was not reading from a male's perspective. That's all I'm saying. Very sexist. It was not kind of sexist. It was very sexist. And there was multiple times where I felt like I was being talked at by Jazz. Like, I said something stupid and she was like, no, this is how it is. This is how it's done. Are you dumb? And I felt that way while reading this. But I enjoyed all of the science talk and everything. Like how they had to go through airlocks and decompress and desanitize or sanitize before they would walk into one of the bubbles, like the Armstrong bubble, from coming outside on the moon. This is about a city on the moon named Artemis, and Jazz is the main character. She is okay, going into this, you never know how old Jazz is until like the very end, because she says her age. I'm like a 26-year-old woman, and the whole time I was thinking that she was a 12-year-old or a teenager, and she was having sex and doing God knows what, and her age was very confusing. At times you thought she was like a 9-year-old and then a teenager, and she's actually an adult. And it was very hard to comprehend that. There's also like it's a letter format between her on the moon and this boy down in Kenya whose father works for the Kenyan Space Agency. I enjoyed aspects of it. I enjoyed how fast-paced it was, but I did not enjoy how I was being talked at and how very sexist it was. So should I bump my rating down from a 4 to a 3? I don't know. I will have to keep thinking on it. And yes. And then after I read this, I watched The Martian again with my kids. My kids freaking love The Martian. So I can't wait until they're old enough and mature enough to read the book. The last book I read in February was City of the Play God by Sarwat Chada. It's a Rick Riordan presents, and it's all about Mesopotamian mythology. Earlier this year, my kids, they were learning about ancient Mesopotamia for history, and then I found out this was coming out in January, and I was like, perfect. And so it's all about the Mesopotamian myths, Gilgamesh, and it's got cuneiform, and how it's set in Iraq, not set in Iraq, but it mentions how Mesopotamia is modern day Iraq. And so it is about this boy named Sikander. His family owns a deli, and they are known for their famous Baghdad sauce, which is spicy as fuck. And so his brother, Mo, he dies while over in Iraq, and his brother was all into learning about his history and where his family came from, and flowers. He loves flowers. He had his own community garden. And so every time he went to Iraq, he would send flowers and clippings to his brother to either plant in the garden or press and put on the walls of the deli. So one night, Sikander is closing up, and his best friend's, not his best friend, his brother's best friend, Dowd, I think I said that right, is being like, yep, what's up? I'm popular. They start hearing banging in their back alley, and they see these big, nasty, disgusting demons eating rats. Reading this, it's very disgusting. You should have a strong stomach while reading this, because while I was reading this out loud to my children, there was multiple times where I was gagging. It was talking about bugs and just ripping the heads off rats and oozing pus and slimy green snot and just, ugh. Set in New York City, and a plague falls over the state, or this city of Manhattan, and people are turning into like disgusting zombies. They're not dying, but there's like comas, and people are like having like wrinkled faces, and it's just, and it brings in Gilgamesh. He's got a greenhouse. It talks about Ishtar and Nergal, the plague god, and the author's note. It talks about how he wrote this before COVID ever happened, and so he's not monetizing COVID, and that was really appropriate to put at the beginning of the book, because if that wasn't there, then I would have thought that he was monopolizing COVID and the plague, but he's not. This is just his mythology. I give this a 4 out of 5 because Sikander, he's on a train heading for Carnegie. I don't know how to say it. I need to look it up. And he meets this guy named Harry. Carnegie is like the afterlife or heaven. It's where people go when they die. And so he meets this old guy named Harry. And the whole time, Harry's just smoothing his jacket, smoothing his hair, and he keeps talking about a woman named Betty. And so I just wanted to read about Harry encountering Betty again. I just wanted to read about the hug and the eventual kiss and the happiness. Did we get that? No. Sikander got off the train first before Harry. Harry was left all alone on this train. And so we didn't get to see his encounter with Betty. And I'm bitter. So, I wanted to know what happened, because I have a soft spot for old people who act all cute and soft and just like, am I okay? And will she still remember me? And like, so 2 minor characters that did not have anything to do with the story at all. They were my favorite, along with the sword, the talking sword. So here are the books -3 that were ebooks that I read in the month of February. My throat is hurting, and I have a couple more videos to film today. So if you like this video, if you've read any of these books or want to read any of these books, comment down below. Let me know if you are planning on reading, and I will say yay or nay. Like, don't even waste your time, or yes, hurry up and pick it up immediately. Run as far as you can. So yes, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.